NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You know, I wish I was on the West Coast for sports. Me and Rachel were just talking about this before we got going here on the Locked On NHL podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Joe DiBiase from Locked On Sabres, Rachel Donner from Locked On Flyers. Sometimes I just ponder if I lived in LA and, you know, hockey games started at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and football games on Sunday started at 8 a.m. And, you know, the NBA Finals seems to be the one that always starts at 9:30 on the East Coast. So maybe that would have been a more tolerable time. It's probably delightful.
Let me tell you, the sweet spot for sports is the Mountain Time Zone. Having lived there for 10 years, it is the perfect place to live to watch sports in North America because the East Coast games start right at 5. So you can sort of get away with watching the game maybe from work on your laptop, drive home during the first intermission, watch the rest of the game, right? And then the West Coast games just start at 8 or 8:30, which is totally reasonable. So, and, you know, the football games are at 11 and 2. It's the perfect place to live for sports.
That's pretty good. I also just love the line that the Mountain Time Zone is the sweet spot for sports. One of my coworkers is in Hawaii right now. And so obviously, like, the reason this was brought up is long day for me yesterday with Jack Eichel being traded. We will cover that thoroughly today on the Locked On NHL podcast. We'll go through some other things that happened last night in the league. We had a couple of 4-goal scorers. We have our NHL power rankings from Locked On NHL as well to go through. But lots of Jack Eichel talk today. Long day for me yesterday. I was at WGR in Buffalo. I basically lived there yesterday from like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And you can check out my thoughts also at Locked On Sabres if you're looking for more expansive thoughts. But the Sabres then played at 10 o'clock at night. So after a long day, it's like, all right, now we're playing Seattle. It's a 10 p.m. puck drop, so that's not ending till 1. And then, all right, I'm gonna want to do a podcast immediately after that. So I'm talking about being up till 2. And me and Rachel are supposed to be recording just after 7:30, and then I'm on air again at WGR at 9. So I'm just like, I'm gonna watch the Sabre game after the fact, and I'm going to sleep at 9:30, 10 o'clock, whatever. I ended up falling asleep. So that's how that came up because I'm already sick of the West Coast time zone or the West Coast puck drops, even though the Sabres haven't had one in – this is really the first time in 2 years that they've had that.
It's an adjustment. The Flyers had a few of them last week, but it's still like it's so great to see different teams than we did last year. So
that's true.
Absolutely think it's worth it.
First time seeing Seattle last night, too. That arena, just seeing pictures, like the natural light, like on the sunset coming in because the sides of the building are all glass, or not all glass, but a lot of glass. Super cool looking arena, Climate Pledge Arena in Seattle. But anyways, let's get to Jack Eichel being traded to the Vegas Golden Knights. The Sabres send Eichel to Vegas along with a 3rd-round pick in 2023 in exchange for Peyton Krebs, Alex Tuch, a 2022 first-round pick that is top 10 protected, and a 2023 second-round pick. Your immediate reaction, who do you think did well in this trade value-wise? Did it strike you as the Golden Knights didn't pay a lot, or did it strike you as being a haul?
Well, I think it's somewhere in the middle, to be honest, because I think there's a large amount of risk here in not knowing whether or not Eichel's going to recover from this injury and be able to play to even close to the level that he had been projected to be, you know, as a number 2 overall pick. And so with that risk, you don't get the kind of haul that maybe people were talking about 3 or 4 months ago, or, you know, when the offseason was just kicking off and, you know, people had said, oh, maybe they'll get 2 number 1 picks or, you know, a top prospect and a few other top picks. And I just didn't think that was going to be realistic. So given all of that and the risk involved, you know, maybe they could have done better. It seemed like the rumors out there about the Flames was a better deal with Matthew Tkachuk, who was a more known entity. But, you know, Peyton Krebs, I think, is going to be a real solid player. And that's like nothing to sneeze at there. So with the picks that they got, with the top level prospect in Peyton Krebs, I think it's a solid deal. Is it the best they could have gotten? Maybe not. But knowing that they absolutely wanted to send him out west, and what teams were potentially in the running, Anaheim maybe, and then Vegas. So
Yep.
I think it's pretty good. Wouldn't say the best, but pretty good.
That's exactly how I looked at it. Like my first reaction, I had also people, a couple of buddies, like blowing up my phone, like, what did I think of the trade? And I think my response was like, they got mad because I just had one word, fine. Like, I think they did fine. Like, I don't think they did great. I don't think they got, it was not the Ryan O'Reilly trade, which I think a lot of Sabre fans were fearing would happen again, where you couldn't get another team's top prospect. And you were getting these cap dumps in return, these veteran anchors on the bottom of your roster for multiple seasons. And that was something that we thought could happen if they had traded with Anaheim. Adam Henrique coming back to make the salary work, or if it was the Calgary deal, like would Milan Lucic be included in that deal just to make the salary work? And in this case, the thing that I liked about this trade that I think that made me like it more so than I would have had he not been in it is the guy that made the salary work was Alex Tuck, and that's not a cap dump. That's a 25-year-old good top six winger that's only making $4.75 million and is under contract for 4 years. And by all accounts, he's very happy to be here. And man, is it hard to find guys like that these days to want to play for the Buffalo Sabres. You see the quote from Kevin Adams yesterday about guys wanting that they want guys dying to be Buffalo Sabres.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to happen very often, but if you're from upstate New York, maybe that's something you say.
And that happened here. Like, they found a guy from Syracuse down the road that he seems very thrilled to be close to home and be back in upstate New York. But again, like, I like Tuck as a player. Like, he's really the modern day power forward to me. Like, he's big. He's 6'4", 220, and he throws his body around, but he skates like the wind. Like, he's not flat-footed. He's not like, I think of guys like Lucic, who just had, it seemed like they had bricks in their skates. Like, I like Tuck for that. They did okay. Like, they wanted 4 first-round pieces. They want either four pieces equivalent in value to that of a first-round pick. I think they got 3. They got a first. They got Peyton Krebs, who I think I saw is like the 11th ranked prospect in the NHL at like Hockey News. So, like, is he an elite prospect? No, but is he a very good one? Like, he should be a top 6 player in the league.
Yeah.
I think, like, he's very skilled. I like the style. Like, he reminds me, it's a lofty comparison, but he really reminds me of Matthew Barzal just because of his speed and his stick handling. It'd be great if he became that player. We'll see. But I think they got 3. I think Tuck is probably the equivalent of a first-round pick, too, in a league where, salary and, like, affordable contracts, like guys like Blake Coleman are getting traded for first-round picks. So I think they got the equivalent of 3 first-round picks, and they get 2 players that will help them in the next year or so. So that was really my overall thoughts. For Vegas, loved it for Vegas. Now, I don't think it was a good value trade. They didn't give away the farm. And doesn't Eichel just seem like the final piece for them? Like, they've made big swings. Like, even when Fleury wasn't playing well, they went out and traded for Robin Leonard. And like, all right, we don't have this franchise defenseman. Let me go sign Alex Pietrangelo and throw a bunch of money at him. I didn't have a real top line scoring winger. Let me go sign Max Pacioretty and Mark Stone. And now they don't really have the number 1 center. And here's Vegas again being like ultra aggressive to fill their holes.
Yeah, I think they absolutely embody the city they live in, which is like go big or go home with everything that they do. They're constantly in win now mode, and this is a win now move.
Mm. And what do you think of their chances now? Because they're so injured. Like, if you look at their lineup right now, it's unrecognizable. Because they've got Stone that's injured, and Pacioretty is injured, and William Karlsson is out 4 to 6 weeks. And Eichel obviously doesn't help the short term. His timetable for return, he said he wants to be back by the Olympics. That might be a little aggressive of a timeline. March might be more likely for him, but he's not getting there till late in the season. So we think they make it through these injuries and they'll still be fine, make the playoffs.
I think so. Yeah, I've been pretty attuned to those injuries just because William Karlsson and Mark Stone are on my fantasy team, which
Mm,
has not been good for me personally. But I do think they're just the kind of team that will muddle through and make it work because that's what they do. And they have the solid goaltending right now. And, it's going to be a little messy, but that division is really easy to stumble a little bit and still make the playoffs.
right. What did you make, by the way, of? I know you mentioned in passing the Calgary rumor. Matthew Tkachuk's name was thrown around by Kevin Weeks, and that was a curious one because Kevin Weeks, who's ESPN, NHL Network, like he's reputable. He's been on top of stories before as a reporter. It was very quickly met with, "This isn't true." Like Elliot Friedman came out with that, and Pierre LeBrun came out with that, and Frank Saravelli came out with that, and my thought was, okay, well, he didn't make it up out of thin air. Now, maybe the person, the person that was talking with him, made it up out of thin air, and like, who's got something to gain here? Because now what we're finding out, and actually, you know what? Let me save this because this gets more into the weeds of why the trade happened when it did, and also I want to get to some of the medical stuff as well, that Jack Eichel spoke about yesterday during his media rounds. Before we get into all of that, though, I want to remind you this podcast is brought to you by Built Bar. I love Thanksgiving, all of the good food and treats and plenty of them, but maybe you want a yummy dessert, but isn't so full of calories and sugar. It's the perfect time for Built Bars. Built Bar is the new holiday dessert. Feast on something delicious and feel good about it. One slice of pie has upwards of 300 calories, and that's on the low end. Most Built Bars are only 130 calories and only 4 grams of sugar with plenty of protein. Replace the coconut cream pie with coconut Built Bar, or go for raspberry Built Bar instead of that raspberry pie. Lots of good flavors to replace any pie. Low calorie, low carb, low fat, high protein, covered in 100% real chocolate. New surprises all month too. Limited flavors arriving at built.com regularly. I just tried the blueberry muffin flavor the other day. Super good. Check out the site often. There's nothing like a Built Bar Black Friday. Mark your calendar. Black Friday will be a huge event with all sorts of surprises. Go to built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your order. Use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. Joe DiBiase and Rachel Donner here on the Locked On NHL podcast. All right, so I started getting into the timing of the trade and some of the reports that were surrounding around it because it was Wednesday night that we saw reports from Kevin Weeks about a Calgary deal. And Sabre fans got real excited after months and months of kind of being beat down with all of these trade rumors and hearing that the trade package might not be what you might hope. Here's Kevin Weeks telling you Matthew Tkachuk and 4 other pieces are on the table. A first-round pick, 2 prospects, and a guy who's a former first-round pick. And, like, blew me away, like, that they could get that much. Because Tkachuk is a great player. And it was immediately met with that's not the case. The Tkachuk's not in these deals. Friedman said it, Saravelli, LeBrun. Where did it come from? Now, who had something to gain is kind of the game I would want to play here. Because I don't think Kevin Weeks made this up out of thin air. I think because we found out yesterday that Jack Eichel, who did this media round with Elliot Friedman on Sportsnet and John Buchagras on ESPN2, he was ready to blast. He was going to go scorched earth. John Vogel of The Athletic reported Wednesday night there was outside influence kind of pushing the Sabres to want to get that deal done tonight. And it ended up being done really early the next morning. And I think what came out yesterday too, Vogel said, was that pressure from the outside that caused them in part to make that deal was Eichel was about to go on national television and blast the organization for not allowing him to get the surgery he wants and kind of go into the weeds of what's been happening behind the scenes. And maybe, in my opinion, I wonder if the Sabres, hey, Kevin Adams and Kevin Weeks played together back in Carolina. They're former teammates. Did the Sabres try to use that to get Vegas to up their offer? That is reckless speculation on my end. But doesn't it just feel weird that Tkachuk's name would just be brought up if it was meritless?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I try not to believe in conspiracy theories or things like this, but it makes a ton of sense. If the Sabres had their backs up against the wall and they were trying to get every last scrap they could out of Vegas, putting a name like that out there is a really good idea. And maybe it worked and they got one extra pick and we don't know that, or maybe it didn't and they just had to sign the deal anyway because it seems like Vegas are pretty good negotiators.
Yeah.
That it was maybe worth it in the end. I don't know if it was worth it for Kevin Weeks. We'll see if he's gun shy in the future in terms of putting stuff like that out there. But I do think that when you're up against a wall like that with timing and this publicity is about to get out there, you do what you can. So would not shock me.
Weeks got burned here. Whoever that source is, like he got spun around a lot on that one for the next like 12 hours. That hey, it's not true. What are you talking about? And Tkachuk had a meeting with Brad Treleving of Calgary about this rumor after the fact. So the other, I know I'm just kind of throwing conspiracy theories around, but the other theory I thought about was that he was on the table. He got wind of it after that report, and he immediately called around to his agent and the team and said, I'm not going to Buffalo, so you better not even think about this. And maybe that would have obviously caused that to break apart too. It's tough to want to just assume players would want to come here. So I don't think there's any, I don't think that's too big of a stretch if that's the case, but who knows? The most interesting thing to me that came out of Eichel's interviews was because you had the, he thanked the Sabres organization. He apologized to Sabre fans for not doing more to bring a winner to the city. He did all of that. He also, even though he didn't want to go too far into it, he was like willing to talk about the injury situation and speaking about not having the right to be able to get the neck surgery that he wanted, feeling pressured to do something with his body that, or really not even pressure, but he's saying like the team shouldn't have the final say. They shouldn't be able to decide for me if I've done the research and whatnot. And what did you make of all that? Friedman said that he thinks it'll be a hot button topic in the next CBA, and we'll see. It's 5 years away if it'll still hold up to that.
I mean, I think it will hold up. I think, despite the fact that the Players Association is in a bit of a mess for other reasons, which we've talked about on the show before, I think that they make these lists and they're ready to go when negotiations come around. And it's a fair point. I mean, when it's an injury that will affect you, like he said, for the rest of his life, I don't think it's fair for an employer to be able to make that decision for you. I think that, these things are pretty serious. It's neck surgery. It involves the spine. Like that is very scary stuff. And, despite the fact that he has amazing confidence in the procedure and wants to go forward with it, you do know that every surgery comes with risk, and he has decided what level of risk he wants to take for himself in his future. I think it's a valid point, and it's a conversation that needs to be had. Now, they are professional athletes and they're getting paid a lot of money to do certain things that they should be able to, teams should be able to make rules for the players. Like, I don't disagree with that, in terms of making sure that they reflect well on the team, making sure that they are in good physical condition in terms of being in shape when they get to camp and stuff like that. Like those kinds of limitations are reasonable because it's part of job performance, but this goes outside of job performance. So I think he has a fair point.
What I wonder too is because what else did Eichel say yesterday? He said that all of the second opinions that he saw, and he started gathering a bunch of them, he said every doctor he saw other than the Sabres doctor were on board with getting the artificial disc replacement surgery. Basically what came out of all this is The only argument against it was that it had never been done on an NHL player, when comparing it to fusion. Even though, even as Eichel said, he had talked to hockey players that had gotten it in college and high school. He had done his due diligence. He had talked with Chris Weidman of the UFC, who had this surgery, and talked about it being minimally invasive and your range of motion not being affected nearly as much as fusion, and the resurgery rate is not nearly as high. But what's interesting is Eichel also said he asked for a trade before last season if they were going to go into a rebuild. And they didn't. They signed Taylor Hall. They traded for Eric Stahl. They tried one last kick at the can to give Eichel a contending team and not want him to want to leave. So, but he said that conversation did not go well. That he came to the Sabres last year with that. I don't want to be here for another rebuild or for a rebuild. And if that's the case, like, why don't you move me and jumpstart it with picks and prospects? He said that didn't go well, and he felt that was part of the reason why this whole process was so difficult. And I can't believe that this would be true, but the way that sounds to me is the Sabres were so bitter with him about him wanting to leave that's why they didn't let him get the surgery. But doesn't it feel like that's too cynical? Because it's a neck surgery. It's not like choosing where you want to go or something more minor. Like, it's the guy's health.
Yeah, it's hard to put that together, though, I think, because if they were really wanting to put Eichel in the best light possible in order to trade him,
right?
Having had, let's just assume that bad experience from a year ago is true, why would you make the relationship look worse? Like, how does that help you in negotiations? It makes you look desperate. So I don't know if I would buy that entirely. I mean, I guess anything's possible with the ownership there, that they tend to make some questionable choices, but I just don't see them making themselves look bad as a helpful thing.
One other thing I'm just reading real quick. Eichel said also in a different interview that he would have come back to play for Buffalo as a way to show other teams he was healthy and make a trade easier if the Sabres had let him get the artificial disc replacement surgery. I don't know if he's telling the truth or not. I think he's usually pretty genuine. For some reason, he doesn't get credit for that. I think it's just because he's kind of then this happens. Guys that are kind of low energy in the media and whatnot, like, he's not super expressive or emotional. He can maybe come off as not being genuine, but he's always come off as genuine to me. I've always said all along that morally, I feel like you should let him get the surgery in the first place. It would have helped, like, even kind of like what you're leading to. Like, did you do everything you could to make him tradable, to maximize his value? And I feel like the answer to that question is no, because the battle with him didn't help. And I think I think at some point, if you had just allowed him to get the surgery, of course there's risk. If it goes wrong, then you're on the hook for his contract and you're screwed. But if it goes right, then he's back on the ice for you if he's telling the truth here that he would have done that. And it's like, oh, look, Jack Eichel's back to form, and I don't have this risk for trading him that I might have had before. Anything I'm missing here? Do you think we've pretty much tackled everything on the Eichel situation? There's a lot, so it's easy to miss something.
Yeah, I think it's just little like fun facts on the side. The Vegas Golden Knights seem to enjoy trading their first round picks in order to win now. And then conversely, a lot of NHL's second overall picks have been traded from the last decade. You look at 2012, 14, 15, 16, 17, all traded.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's crazy. In Vegas, they're becoming like the LA Rams of the NHL.
Yeah. Well, Vegas has gotten two of them now. So they have Eichel and Nolan Patrick.
Right. They also have traded away, like, when's the last time? Do they have any first round pick prospects left?
Well, the last 2 years they have their picks from 20 and 21.
Okay, that's right. But like, right, everybody else.
But before that, they're all gone.
Yeah. Krebs is gone now. Cody
Suzuki.
Glass, Suzuki, Brandstrom.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, Vegas, they're going all in. The Sabres continue to put their rebuild together, and we're going to take a quick timeout. Rachel's got a word for Bet Online, and then we're going to talk some of the big things that happened in the league last night, and also our Locked On NHL Power Rankings.
Bet Online is back and better than ever. They've got a new web interface for the start of basketball season, more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football and hockey action this season. Head to their new updated desktop or mobile website and sign up today. You'll receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use that promo code Locked On to get that bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait and take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Joe DiBiase and Rachel Donner here on the Locked On NHL podcast. Look at last night. We had a hat trick, first hat trick in Seattle Kraken history by Jordan Eberle in a 5-2 win over the Sabres. And then we had 2 4-goal nights, Brock Nelson and Patrice Bergeron. I think, Rachel, did you have the stat? It's been the first time in like almost 20 years that's happened.
2005 was the last time that happened. Patrice Bergeron is a guy, 4-goal game, sure. Brock Nelson would not have bet on that, let me tell you.
No, me neither. Good for him. Good for him and the Islanders, who kind of had a slow start to the season. And huge nights for both of them. First time since 2005. By the way, Alex Ovechkin also scoring last night. He's up to 10 this season. He is now 1 goal away from Brett Hull for 4th all time. I say he does it. I think that's obvious, obviously. That was an attempt at a joke that didn't land perfectly. Ovechkin, I'm so focused in on that Gretzky record, and he is off to an amazing start to keep that conversation in the window for the next year or so going forward. So some big performances last night in the league. We had our Locked On NHL Power Rankings that were released the other day, and we had a new number 1. The Carolina Hurricanes jump the Florida Panthers. They go from 2 to 1. They have 1 fewer point. Actually, they had 1 fewer point. Let me just double check that that's the case. But are we okay with Carolina being the number 1 team in the league for our power rankings?
I don't know. I think I almost want to see them play head to head again before I would make that call. I think, Florida is just, they're so good right now that I feel like there are weaknesses that people can exploit against the Canes that maybe aren't there with the Panthers. But, I can't begrudge anybody either of those votes. I do want to give a shout out to the guys on the show yesterday who talked about the power rankings in more detail. Flyers have been sort of sitting at 17 for a while, and they've been at 16 or 17 so far, and that's it. Haven't really moved. And, at the time of the voting, they were 8th in point percentage in the league. And so to get voted at 17th when you're 8th is a bit of a fall. I'm not saying they should be top 5. I think maybe they could move up 5 spots and have it be reasonable. So thanks, guys.
Anything. I don't see any movement at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're below. Like the Sabres moved up the spot, which was kind of curious to me because I don't think they had a very good week. But all right, they move up a spot. The Oilers at 3 and the Capitals at 4. The Capitals, I think, did you point out to me that they have the most loser points in the NHL?
They do. They have 4 of them.
Yeah, 5. I mean, really, they're 5-5. 5-1-4. So by NHL standards, they have 14 points. But I would have had them. I had them a lot lower than 4th. I did not like them that much coming into the year. They have a +9 goal differential. So I think they're going to be a playoff team. Probably is what they're on track for. Islanders and Pittsburgh. Those are the other 2 teams I wanted to bring up because we had the Penguins now at 11. They started off the season like super high in this ranking. And then the Islanders are down at 16. Now they're both out of playoff spots. They're actually near the bottom of their conferences, even though despite the fact they have winning records. I don't know, like, are either one of those teams in real trouble of kind of falling out of favor out of a playoff spot this year? I feel like Pittsburgh, it's more just because they haven't had Crosby and Malkin.
Right. I think they're kind of riding on that reputation that once those guys get back, they're going to be fine. And so you can't have them fall too much. I think with the Islanders, they're in an interesting situation right now because they've been on the road so far this whole
Right.
season because of the new arena, and they're about to actually start playing some home games. And so I think that just the excitement of all of that and having a run of games at home will give them a boost. And so maybe people just didn't want them to drop that far because they were giving them a break for being on the road this whole time.
Mhm. All right, Rachel, what do you got going on over at Locked On Flyers?
Talked about last night's overtime loss to the Pens, and we got a game up against that loser point Washington Capitals team this weekend to talk about. And so, yeah, lots of good stuff going on. Really pleased with Carter Hart this season. I think we've had a lot of good stuff to say about him. So, yeah, come on over, take a listen.
And on Locked On Sabres, yesterday was more really reflection. So it had a more of a negative tone, let's say. It was more anger and sadness that the last 6 years with Jack Eichel, when there was so much hope for what he could have been for this organization, like how it went. Today, more optimistic. We start to look forward, the trade pieces they got back, and really when you start to look at the list of prospects that the Sabres have compiled over this offseason, you start to they got to hit. They got to be good. They got to turn into good players. But it feels like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, despite the fact that the last 6 years have been so dark. That's so check out Locked On Flyers, check out Locked On Sabres. I'll be back on the Locked On NHL podcast on Tuesday with Mike DiStefano. And that's it for us. Thanks for making Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Host Scott Cullen leans on his decades of fantasy hockey insight and experience every day to help you be the expert of your fantasy league. It's free and available on all platforms.